In the years when America was still immersed in the roar of big engines and the heavy scent of gasoline that seemed to blend into the air itself, there existed a car company so small that it was easily forgotten amid Detroit's forest of steel. Crosley Motors, operating from 1939 to 1952. When the entire nation chased after sedans nearly as long as a living room, Crosley instead introduced an idea that seemed almost upside down. Tiny cars, extremely lightweight, with engines under 1 liter, consuming fuel at an almost unbelievable rate. To many Americans of that era, they looked strange, even a bit comical. The kind of car you could lift the front end of with just 2 people. But behind that modest appearance was a bold philosophy: to create a vehicle that anyone could afford to own and operate. Crosley did not leave a major mark on the automotive industry, but the story of how the company appeared, why it existed, and what drove the creation of those little machines, that is what makes this journey far more fascinating than it first seems. To understand Crosley Motors, we must return to the early 20th century, when America was still searching for its industrial identity. And in Cincinnati, the Crosley brothers, Powell and Lewis, began their journey with dreams far larger than their circumstances. Powell Crosley, born in 1886, was the kind of person America of that era always needed: bold, full of ideas, and capable of seeing markets before they existed. His younger brother Lewis, born in 1888, was the perfect counterbalance: calm, practical, and the managerial mind behind every important decision. One dreamer, one anchor. Their combination became the foundation for the Crosley empire that would come later. Powell's passion for automobiles began very early. In 1900, at just 14 years old, he bet his father $10, equivalent to about $350 today, that he could build a car that would run a single block. No one believed him, except young Lewis, who even loaned Powell money to try. The result? Powell successfully built a primitive electric vehicle and won the bet, then used the winnings to repay his brother. A small victory, but enough to ignite a much larger flame. However, the following years were not all bright. Dropping out of law school, Powell founded the Marathon 6 Automotive Company in 1907, aiming to build a $1,700 automobile. But the economy collapsed at the wrong moment. The company failed quickly. For many, that would have been the end. But for Powell, it was merely tuition. He continued working for Carl Fisher, the man behind the Indianapolis 500, where he learned invaluable lessons about marketing, storytelling, and how to turn an idea into a movement. These early experiences, failure, persistence, and a relentless willingness to learn, shaped Powell Crosley into an inventor unafraid of risk. And that became the foundation for everything he would later build. When America entered the 1910s, steam engines and assembly lines were defining a new industrial era. In that environment, Powell Crosley found opportunity where others saw only scrap, and that ability opened the first major turning point of his business career. In 1916, partnering with Ira Cooper of Cooper Tires, Powell created the inside tire liner from leftover rubber that was otherwise discarded. Simple as it was, the product was a perfect fit for the market: cheap, practical, and easy to sell. Thanks to the franchise-style dealer network he built, the product spread so quickly that within 3 years, sales exceeded $1 million, a remarkable comeback for a man who had once failed in the automobile industry. Yet that success was only a stepping stone to something greater. As radios began appearing in wealthier households, Powell understood that the device would soon become the heart of the American living room, if someone could make it affordable. So he built a radio for his son for just $25, and from that prototype, launched the Harco in 1921 for only $7. The impossible happened. By 1925, Crosley had become the largest radio manufacturer in the world, bringing sound, news, and baseball into the homes of America's working class. But to sell radios in massive numbers, Powell needed one more element: content. So he built the WLW radio station and kept expanding it until, in 1935, the station operated a 500-kilowatt transmitter, the most powerful in the world. On favorable nights, WLW's signal could cross the ocean, reaching listeners in Europe with the sound of America broadcast from Cincinnati. With its enormous reach, WLW earned the proud nickname, the nation's station. Powell's sharp instincts did not stop at broadcasting. When the Cincinnati Reds baseball team stood on the brink of bankruptcy in 1934, he saw yet another opportunity to reinvent a symbol. Just 1 year later, he installed floodlights and organized the first night game in MLB history, then broadcast it live through WLW. Attendance quadrupled, and baseball entered an entirely new era of entertainment. At the same time, he continued leaving his mark on home appliances. With the Shelvador refrigerator introduced in 1933, Powell unveiled the door shelf design, a detail that seems obvious today, yet was an invention that transformed food storage habits for millions of American families. And precisely when the Crosley empire had already cast its shadow over radio, broadcasting, baseball, and home appliances, Powell Crosley decided to return to his first dream. An old dream that had smoldered within him since the days when he was a boy, betting $10 with his father. It was the dream of returning to the automobile industry. And by 1936, when everything in business was going well, he decided to seize the opportunity that youth had once let slip away. Louis, the cautious younger brother, opposed it because the risk was too great. But this time, Powell was no longer the inexperienced young man of years past. He had capital, a dealer network, and a strong belief in small cars. So he used his own money to pursue a project whose future no one dared guarantee. Inspired by the British Austin 7, Powell wanted to create a car that was simple, economical, and accessible to every American family. And by 1939, the first generation bearing the name Crosley 1A officially debuted. It was a compact car with a fabric roof, only about 10 feet long, an 80-inch wheelbase, and an air-cooled two-cylinder engine. With a price of only $325, an amount most workers could afford, the first Crosley promised to open an entirely new market. But what made Crosley different was not just the product itself. Powell took advantage of his own home appliance distribution network, more than 25,000 stores across America, and placed this tiny car right next to refrigerators and radios. It was a way of selling cars never seen before in history. And Americans seemed curious. A car light enough for two people to lift the front end, yet efficient enough to deliver 50 miles per gallon at 50 miles per hour. Even so, Crosley had little time to make a significant impression before World War II erupted. When America entered the war, all civilian automobile production had to stop. Crosley had sold 5,757 cars by then, but that number mattered far less than how the company transformed itself to serve the military. And this was the period when Powell Crosley proved that he was not just a talented businessman, he was someone capable of contributing to the war effort at a level few civilian entrepreneurs ever reached. During wartime, Crosley produced field kitchens, gun turrets, and even small 4x4 vehicles called PUP, which could be parachuted onto battlefields. They were light, agile, and suited for missions that standard Jeeps struggled to handle. But more important than all of that, Crosley participated in one of the most secret and consequential military projects of the era, the proximity fuse, a technology ranked third in importance during World War II. Behind only the atomic bomb and radar, it was a miniature radar built into the tip of a shell. When the shell flew close to an enemy aircraft, it detonated automatically. Thanks to it, anti-aircraft artillery became far more accurate and effective. To serve the military, Crosley also developed an entirely new type of engine, the Cobra copper-brazed engine. Instead of being cast from iron like traditional engines, the Cobra was made from sheet steel, brazed with copper, lighter, cheaper, and suitable for mass wartime production. It was a bold technical advancement, a symbol of Crosley's less is more philosophy. When World War II ended, America entered a new era. Wider roads, rapidly growing cities, and ever larger dreams of the middle class. Americans wanted powerful, spacious, shiny cars, symbols of the prosperity they had reclaimed after years of sacrifice. And in that environment, Crossley Motors entered the most difficult chapter of its history. Right after the war, Powell Crosley made a decision that historians would later call a self-destructive blow. He sold all his other companies to the AVCO Corporation, keeping only Crosley Motors and the Cincinnati Reds baseball team. With AVCO handling the financial side, Powell believed he would have the resources to accelerate the automobile business. But the harsh truth was that he had just abandoned the money-making engines that had sustained the Crosley empire and kept only the most expensive part. The second disaster came from excessive confidence in engineering. Powell decided to continue using the Cobra engine, the copper-brazed sheet steel engine that had proven effective during the war, for civilian cars. In theory, it was lighter, stronger, and far more advanced than traditional cast-iron engines. But war is not the street, and real-world operating conditions quickly exposed a fatal weakness: corrosion. Louis Crosley had warned him beforehand, but Powell believed Cobra was the future. Thus, when the Crosley CC4 models went into use, customers began encountering the same issue. The engine's water jackets corroded through after only a short period of operation. Tiny pinholes turned into leaks, which turned into failures, and within just a few months, what had once been Crosley's technological pride became a nationwide embarrassment. The brand's reputation collapsed as quickly as a crack spreading across a windshield. Advertising efforts were not enough to save it. America at that time had too many choices: Nash, Studebaker, Kaiser Frazer, and especially Ford and Chevrolet, which had flooded the used car market with unbelievably cheap vehicles, the result of the post-war production race. Americans no longer needed a small, fuel-efficient car. They wanted space, power, and a sense of triumph. And that was something Crosley could not provide. Even so, Powell did not back down. He replaced the Cobra with the cast-iron CIBA engine in 1949, a durable, reliable 724 cubic centimeter engine. And from that change, Crosley Motors entered a brief but brilliantly shining chapter in its history. This was the moment the Crosley HotShot was born in 1949, a tiny but bold sports car considered the first modern American sports car after the war. Thanks to its under 1,000-pound weight, advanced four-wheel disc brakes, and easy customization, the HotShot became a fresh breeze in amateur racing circles. One HotShot even won the inaugural Sebring race in the production car category. And after the HotShot came the Farmo Road, a half-truck, half-tractor vehicle, a companion for farmers that many experts today consider the ancestor of the modern UTV side-by-side segment. If Detroit dreamed of highways, the Farmo Road was born for fields, slopes, and dirt paths, an idea too early for its time. But no matter how unique and interesting these models were, Crosley could not withstand the tidal wave of low prices from the big automakers. When Ford and GM launched a price war, the used car market was instantly flooded with spacious, powerful sedans priced the same as, or cheaper than, a brand new Crosley. Americans chose the obvious: buy a big car for less money. Crosley's sales plummeted without breaks. In 1951, the company sold 4,839 units, a modest number, but still enough to spark hope. Then just 1 year later, that figure dropped to 1,522 units. By July 1952, Crosley Motors officially shut down. From its birth to its end, the company sold about 84,000 cars, a small number, yet enough to leave a mark in American automotive history. And when looking back at the journey of Crosley Motors, we do not simply see a small car company that disappeared more than 7 decades ago. We see a bold experiment in how America might have traveled if circumstances had been different. Crosley was the first American automobile to use an overhead cam engine in 1946, the first to apply 4-wheel disc brakes, one of the earliest brands to use the term sports utility. And all of these came from a man who believed that radios, refrigerators, or baseball could always be made better if given the chance. But post-war America chose a different path, the path of large, spacious, powerful machines. The timing of Crosley's arrival was not on its side, and the Cobra engine scandal only shortened its story further. If Crosley had been born in Europe, where small car culture runs deep, its name might today stand beside the Volkswagen Beetle or the Citroën 2CV. And even though the brand has vanished, the Crosley legacy remains, a reminder that in the world of American machinery, sometimes the smallest ideas carry the biggest hearts. If you've followed the Crosley story all the way to this moment, perhaps you also feel what many classic car enthusiasts have always held in their hearts. Every car, whether small or grand, carries within it a piece of American history. So if you wish to continue the journey of exploring Detroit's forgotten legends, please hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any episode in this vintage car documentary series. Leave a comment below. Have you ever seen a Crosley in real life? What do you think caused this automaker to fail? Or were they simply born at the wrong time? Every thought, every memory you share helps bring this story to life. See you again in the journeys ahead, where we continue unrolling the dust-covered reels of America's automotive history.